criteria, since we're facing this revenue crisis, we want as much revenue as possible. We want it to be as progressive as possible, and we want it as soon as possible so we could cover the life-saving programs that are on the chopping block right now.
So, yeah, we want to have a discussion. They're making decisions now. We need to, as a community, be able to talk with them about this intelligently and talk with our friends about this intelligently. So let's hash it out.
Actually, there's one back here with the white has been.
I've had it up for a long time. There's a very important part in here that point you brought up. Is that the people of Washington have already had to endure over $10 billion in cuts to critical programs the last 3 years, and not one tax loophole has passed. That is the most important sentence I think we can say to anybody at any group. The Republicans or opposition, for them to be able to report to that is very important. If not one tax loophole has passed and $10 billion in cuts, that's very serious.
That's huge. Yeah.
Well,
Just a helpful thing to know is that a couple of our representatives have put forward to the state Supreme Court a challenge to Tim Einen's bullshit. So I think that's something that it's really good to know and to articulate to representatives. We are behind this movement to go back to the Supreme Court and reassume our power so that we can enact taxes as we see fit.
and so she's talking about a 2/3 majority is needed to pass any new revenue.
Right.
Which Tim Einen's initiative put into place, and which makes it really hard. Everyone's hands are tied supposedly up there and that's why it's been so hard to do one tax loophole.
I don't know.
Can you explain some of the tax loopholes that need to be closed? Because there's some people in this room that are unfamiliar with that or new with it.
So there's a bunch of them out there. They all have big money behind them, so that's one reason that makes it so hard. I know that it's really amazing. The other day, the Republicans in the House, in their budget, they said that they wanted to close a tax loophole, and they want to close this tax loophole for first-time home ownership, mortgage ownership. So that's great. We saw this bill last year talked about presented by Democrats in the House. So it's amazing that we've gotten that far. That means that we have been doing a good job putting pressure on all parts of government. So that is one. Big banks don't like it, but it's mostly big out-of-town banks because they're the ones that hold the most mortgages. There's also, there's silly things like, chicken feed.
There's a gas one that's been on the books since the 60s or 70s that gave them an exemption at that time, but they're still getting that exemption today.
Yeah. Once they're up, then they're going on. So there's, there's like 4 or 5 big ones. It's all this is all strategy though. It's like they have to think about who has big money, who's going to come and oppose this, and what do the voters care about. Like it's all sort of like narrative. Like cosmetic surgery is on there. Like why don't we tax for cosmetic surgery? So you can get into really nitty-gritty, but basically the system needs to change. There's no accountability for tax loopholes. There's huge accountability for human services programs and medical programs. So if they start to ask you can say, I'll get back to you, I'll send Mauricio to you, but just let them know that, big business has to be accountable.
Okay, so I'm talking about today.
Yeah.
And talking to people. And on the blue sheet, it's mostly you're talking about changing corporate or closing corporate loopholes.
Yep.
But yet you said that's really not a short-term thing. That's going to be a long-term. So today, isn't really our focus to be then on this short-term, on this tax, the sales tax thing?
So we can decide what to do.
Is a long
right. The main thing is those three. I know she wants to get. This is Jill. Who knows what?
Because I think it's an important question. So, as an organization, we don't view our role as the folks who go in and ask for what's politically, what's the political thing that we can win. We go in and create political opportunities. So we don't want to go in and ask for a sales tax because really it hurts all of us in this room. We want to go in and demand very progressive revenue options. We want to demand the capital gains tax. We want to demand closing corporate tax loopholes. They may not happen, but it creates opportunities that aren't there if we're not asking for it. So when all is said and done, if we wind up with a sales tax on the ballot, we're not going to be opposing it because we all know that we need that money. But we, as an organization, are not asking for sales tax. We want the ultra wealthy and we want corporations to pay their fair share.
So that's the main message.
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Burning questions.
On the referendum, are we going to, can we support a referendum? Do we say, that seems like something that has to come from the
I
legislature.
think that goes back to Jill, like, we're gonna let them do the strategy, we just need to be the force that's pushing for revenue and saying,
No, we don't have the
and we will
referendum
try.
right now, do we?
We don't know what the referendums are going to look like. No, and I think it really depends.
No, one, you vote no on 74. That has nothing to do here.
So you don't want us to talk about the referendum, or you just
Well,
want
I do think we want to say to legislators, look, put it to a vote of the people. Like, have some courage, put out some progressive tax options and let the people decide. We do want to say that. We don't have to talk about specifics of referendums and process, but we do want them to have some courage and pass something out of the legislature that we can vote on, that we can decide. I think we'll go here and then there.
Yeah, my senator, Senator Klein, and he always, first thing I say anything about revenue, it's 2/3 majority vote, and I'm so tired of that, so I'm gonna really get a lot of input from our leaders on what to say for that. I really want to be prepared for him, and also his colorless society thing, so I really want input what to say. I know what I want to say, but it's not gonna be politically correct, and I'm not. These people get voted in. But I want to be prepared. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the reality is that, the political reality is that they're not going to get a 2/3 majority on progressive taxes. It's not going to happen. I mean, there are people in this state house who signed a pledge saying they would never raise taxes ever.
That's right.
So, right, that's right.
Yeah, all right.
So, I mean, I think that's the response, to say, look, you know, it's not a political reality. Let the people decide, you know? Let the 99% decide. It's clear that message, you know, really resonates with the people in this state and across the country. So let us make that decision.
You got more question over there?
Two questions. Is there a Washington State type ALEC, which is, go ahead, Jeanette.
There's 25 members, there's either 22 or 25, I've read it two different places, that belong
To ALEC?
Yeah.
What's Alex?
Yeah, give them.
ALEC is an organization that actually writes the legislation for a representative to present. And what happened in a state back east is ALEC wrote a bill and it was presented, but the legislator didn't take time to read it and take Alec's name off of it. So the can of worms was opened, the cat jumped out of the bag, and everybody's talking about it. So ALEC, you know, Google it, factscheck.org, nonpartisan, find out as much as you can, and, you know, it's just a little ditty just throw in there and say, well, you know, are you working with ALEC? And the other thing I wanted to just touch upon was, there was an article, or there was a petition about the fact that Northwest had these representatives sign an oath not to raise taxes, and somehow they're trying to figure out, or they have figured out, how that interferes with the oath that our representatives take to represent us.
That's right.
Instead of representing
Thank you.
somebody else. So,
Their own selfish
You can
needs.
look up that ALEC is Media and Democracy, Center for Media and Democracy puts that together. A woman named Lisa Graber runs that group. They are phenomenal. And I'll let you all know through Mariah and everybody here, we're going to try to bring some people from ALEC, the group that's been focusing on that whole legislative process, we're going to try to bring them out here to speak. So I'll let you know if they come. It would be totally riveting. They're really doing some great work.
Well, yeah.
Oh, and can I say one more thing?
Actually, we need to start wrapping this up. But if you want to address,
So I was just thinking that if anyone has any questions or has anything they really want to say, talk to your friends during the day. And if you have questions for us or for Jill, ask us during the day so we can teach on this progressive budget.
Could I just take 1 minute to say then, because I think it's good before we all go out and we have this idea we're going to talk to legislators. So I heard you say that you want to keep the high road and talk about as much money as possible, as progressive as possible, and as soon as possible, right? And you didn't want to focus on like the sales tax. But the other thing, okay, so your capital gains is kind of a long-term solution. I mean, yeah, it really is, isn't it? Because it's not going to happen this year probably. Okay, and the loopholes as well. But then to say, okay, it takes, look how long it took for marriage equality. They kept bringing it up. You have to start bringing it up because it's at least 3 years before something gets passed. So start. Because if you never start, it'll never happen. And that's a good thing to say to your legislators.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, so there is a bill to implement a capital gains tax right now, and leadership in the legislature are talking about it. There are bills with bipartisan support to close corporate tax loopholes. The Republicans just came out and said they want to end the tax exemption for out-of-state banks. So it's not impossible. We don't want to go into the building thinking, hey, this is impossible, this is an impossible thing. We're asking, it's not. And there are proposals out there that folks can decide to support and move. So we absolutely want to go in and say, these are important things, we need progressive taxes, that's right, and make it really clear that that's what the people want. So they can have the courage to put it on
Also, long-term means the money's not going to come into our coffers right away. It's going to take years to build up. That's what kind of long-term. One other thing is,
But at least we'll have it there
Republican,
building up.
Representatives, I highly suggest using the term equitable tax rather than progressive. Progressive are going to just turn you off. Equitable is factual. The 10 billion, just use that term. I think it'll work better.
but if you have your representatives that are already on board with this, just tell them how much you appreciate that, and tell them that they need to keep encouraging these others that aren't on board yet. But it is getting there.
Yeah.
And just to say, since this is the Leadership Council meeting, at 11 o'clock, everyone else is going to come. We're going to have some more time to really talk about what we're saying to legislators today. So this will not be the last time today that we'll have time to talk about that.